I am honored to be here today. When I was young, I never imagined I'd be standing on a stage like this, speaking to people who are about to shape the future. I wasn't the best student, I didn't always follow the rules, and I certainly didn't have everything figured out. But life has a way of connecting the dots. And looking back, I can see that the very things I once thought were setbacks became the foundation for everything I achieved. Today, I want to share 3 simple stories from my life. They're not about success, money, or fame. They're about failure, passion, and the courage to keep going. The first story is about connecting the dots. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like this: "If you live each day as if it were your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It shook me. I started asking myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? If the answer was no too many days in a row, I knew I had to change something. I dropped out of college because I didn't see the value in spending my parents' savings on something I wasn't passionate about. It was scary. I slept on the floors of friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for 5 cents each just to buy food. But leaving college gave me the freedom to drop in on classes that actually interested me. One of those was a calligraphy class. I learned about typefaces, about the beauty of letters, about spacing and proportion. None of this seemed practical at the time. 10 years later, when we were building the first Macintosh, all of that came back to me. The Mac became the first computer with beautiful typography. If I hadn't dropped out, I never would have taken that class. If I hadn't taken that class, computers might never have had fonts the way they do today. You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward, so you have to trust in something: your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Steve Wozniak and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. In 10 years, Apple grew into a $2 billion company with thousands of employees. And then I got fired. How can you get fired from a company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone I thought was very talented to run the company with me. At first it worked, but eventually we had different visions for the future. The board of directors sided with him. At 30, I was out. It was devastating. For a few months, I didn't know what to do. I felt humiliated. I even thought about leaving Silicon Valley. But slowly, I realized something. I still loved what I did. The rejection didn't change that. I had been rejected, but I was still in love. So I started over. I founded 2 new companies, NXT and Pixar. Pixar went on to create the world's first fully computer-animated film, Toy Story, and became the most successful animation studio on the planet. Apple eventually bought Next, and I returned to the company I once lost. Getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. The only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love. That applies as much to work as it does to relationships. Keep looking. Don't settle. My third story is about death. When I was 17, that quote about living each day as if it were your last stayed with me. Decades later, I faced my own mortality. In 2004, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The doctors told me I had only a few months to live. I lived with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening, a biopsy revealed it was a rare, curable form of cancer. Surgery saved my life. But that experience was the closest I've ever been to death, and it changed how I see life. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever found to help me make big choices. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things fall away in the face of death, leaving only what truly matters. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. Most importantly, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. When I look back, I see that my journey wasn't about money or recognition. It was about passion, persistence, and trust. The dots connected because I followed curiosity. The failures gave me resilience. The FUI. I am grateful to be here today. Looking at all of you reminds me of the early days of Apple, when I was surrounded by people who were young, full of energy, and unafraid to dream big. I want to talk today about 3 things that shaped my life: curiosity, failure, and focus. My first story is about curiosity. As a kid, I was fascinated by electronics. My father wasn't an engineer, but he loved working with his hands. He showed me how to take things apart and put them back together. I wasn't just learning how circuits worked, I was learning how the world worked. That curiosity never left me. Years later, it became the reason I wanted to make technology not only functional, but beautiful. Too often, we stop being curious as we grow older. But the truth is, curiosity is what leads to breakthroughs. Never stop asking why. My second story is about failure. People see Apple today and think it was always destined for success. But the reality is we failed a lot. We built products that nobody wanted. We made mistakes that cost millions. And personally, I failed many times as a leader. But every failure was a teacher. Failure stripped away ego, forced us to improve, and pushed us to think differently. Don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid of not trying. The people who change the world are not the ones who never fall. They're the ones who get up again and again, with more determination than before. My third story is about focus. When I returned to Apple in the late 1990s, the company was struggling. We had dozens of products, but none of them stood out. The first thing I did was cut almost everything. We stopped trying to do everything and instead focused on a few things we could do extraordinarily well. That focus gave birth to the iMac, the iPod, and eventually the iPhone. Life is the same way. You can't do everything, and you don't have unlimited time. Decide what matters most to you and focus on that with all your heart. As I stand here today, I'm reminded that life is short, unpredictable, and precious. Don't waste it following someone else's script. Build your own story. Be curious. Embrace failure. Stay focused. And above all, never lose that spark that makes you different. The world doesn't need more copies. It needs originals. Thank you. When I look back at my life, I see a journey that was never straightforward, never predictable, and certainly never easy. Yet in every twist, in every failure, in every rejection, and in every triumph, there was a hidden lesson. A lesson about believing in yourself, about trusting that dots will connect, and about having the courage to follow your heart even when the world tells you otherwise. I never graduated from college. In fact, after just 6 months, I dropped out. To some, that looked like the end of my path. But for me, it was the beginning. Dropping out didn't mean I stopped learning. It meant I stopped learning what didn't matter to me. I started learning what truly fascinated me. I slept on the floors of my friends' dorm rooms, returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposit to buy food, and walked miles across town every Sunday night just to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. It was not glamorous, it was humbling. But those experiences shaped me far more than any classroom could have. One of the classes I stumbled into was calligraphy. It had no hope of practical application at the time. No job would require me to know about fonts or typography. But I was drawn to the beauty, the artistry, the subtlety of how letters were designed. 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh, I remembered that class. We built the Mac with beautiful typography, proportionally spaced fonts, and the kind of design elegance that had never existed in personal computers before. Without that class, the Mac would never have had that soul. And because Windows copied the Mac, every computer today carries a piece of that legacy. That's how life works. You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something. Your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. That belief has never let me down, and it made all the difference in my life. But my story isn't one of straight-line success. In fact, one of the most defining moments in my life came not when I succeeded, but when I failed. At 20 years old, Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from 2 kids in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. And then at 30, I got fired. Imagine that. You get fired from the company you started. It was devastating. My identity was tied to Apple. My passion, my energy, my life, it was all there. To be told we don't need you anymore was a blow that sent me spiraling. For a while, I didn't know what to do. I felt rejected, humiliated, defeated. But slowly, something began to change. I realized that while I had lost Apple, I had not lost my love for what I did. I was still passionate about technology, still hungry to create, still in love with the idea of building something meaningful. So I started again. I began a company called NEXT. I also started another called Pixar. At the time, Pixar was struggling, but we believed in a crazy idea, creating the first fully computer-animated feature film. That film became Toy Story, and today Pixar is the most successful animation studio in the world. Next, though not a commercial success, developed technology that would later become the foundation for Apple's resurgence. And then, a funny thing happened. In a twist of fate, Apple bought Next, and I found myself back at Apple. The company I had built, the company that had once rejected me, was now asking me to lead again. And together we went on to create products that transformed industries. The iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad. Looking back, getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. The only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love. And that is as true for your work as it is for your relationships. Work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. I want to share with you one more story, perhaps the most personal. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. The doctors told me it was likely incurable, that I should get my affairs in order, that I should prepare to die. That phrase, prepare to die, is meant to remind you to live each day as if it were your last. I lived with that diagnosis for months until, miraculously, the doctors discovered it was a rare form of. It's always an honor to stand in front of people who believe in ideas, in progress, and in the possibility of building a future that doesn't yet exist. Every time I speak to a group like this, I feel a sense of responsibility. Not to give you answers, but to remind you of questions. Questions that might help you discover what you were born to do and how to do it in a way that matters. I've been fortunate to live a life where my work, my passion, and my dreams collided, but it wasn't always easy. It wasn't always clear. Most of the time I was stumbling in the dark, guided not by certainty but by curiosity and a stubborn belief that what I was doing had meaning, even when no one else thought so. Today I want to share some reflections, not as a businessman, not as a so-called visionary, but as a human being who made mistakes, fell down, got back up, and kept going. My hope is that somewhere in these stories, you find a spark for your own journey. 1. The power of curiosity. When I was a kid, I was endlessly curious. I would take apart radios, toys, and sometimes even household appliances that my parents weren't too happy about. I didn't do it to break things. I did it to understand them. I wanted to know how things worked, what made them tick, why they behaved the way they did. That curiosity stayed with me. It led me to calligraphy classes at Reed College, even though I had dropped out of formal education. It led me to spend time with engineers, artists, musicians, philosophers. It taught me that the dots you connect in life often come from the most unexpected places. Curiosity is underrated. People think it's just about asking questions. But true curiosity is about living in a constant state of wonder. It's about looking at the world not for what it is, but for what it could become. Every great product, every great company, every breakthrough